Hey guys, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks. This time I'm going to be showing you the T-22 Soviet, which is an upcoming Tier 10 Soviet medium tank, which if it goes into the game as it is, I think is probably going to be one of the best vehicles in World of Tanks. So stay tuned, I've got some killer gameplay coming right up and a little bit of intel about how you might be able to get your hands on one of these. So the T-22 is going to be the 5th Soviet medium tank in the game. We've got the T-62A, the Object 140, the Object 430, the Object 907, and then now this T-22. So what's so special about it? I'm going to do a quick tank compare between the 5 Soviet vehicles. So we have the T-22 on the left, the T-62A, the Object 140, the Object 430, and the Object 907. Now remember, this 907 was available in the first Clan Wars reward tank, and it's very unlikely you're going to be able to get your hands on this. Whereas these 3 vehicles are publicly available in World of Tanks. So let's see how the T-22 squares up. Well, immediately, right off the bat, it has massively lower DPM than the other 4 Soviet vehicles. It has 450 less DPM than the Object 430, which means that this Object 430 has 18% better DPM than the brand new T-22. And even the T-62A and the Object 140 have got 13.5% better DPM than the brand new T-22. But where this tank excels is its gun handling. It has 1.9 seconds aim time. And don't worry, these values are slightly adjusted down, but I'm going to scale them back up for you, which is better than the 2 seconds aim time of the T-62A, and much better than that of the Object 140 or the Object 430, which has 2.3 seconds aim time, which is horrible on a Tier 10 medium. Also, the T-22 is the most accurate of the Soviet medium tanks now. Slightly better accuracy than even the T-62A. And much better than the 430 or the 907. Also, the T-22 has the joint best dispersion while moving with the Object 140 of 0.08, and the joint best on turning the turret with the T-62A of 0.08. But the bloom of the tank is only worse than the T-62A, but is the same as the other 3 Soviet tanks. And there's a marginal amount of difference between the elevation angles, and as we know, only the Object 140 out of all 5 of the Soviet Tier 10 heavy tanks has 6 degrees gun depression, whereas all of the others have 5. So how does the mobility of the T-22 compare? Well, it's the same as all of the other vehicles apart from the T-62A, which is the slowest. But now this is where it really gets crazy. It has a 750 horsepower, which breaks the 580 meta of all of the publicly available ones, and is even better than the Object 907, which has a 610 horsepower engine. So that gives this vehicle a specific power of 33% higher than the standard Tier 10 Soviet medium tanks. And its terrain resistance is only barely worse than the Object 140, the same as the Object 430 and the 907, which you can certainly feel in the gameplay, and the mobility of this tank is a cut above all of the other Soviet medium tanks, which are roughly all the same. The vehicle also has competitive turret traverse with the T-62A and the Object 907, and only marginally worse tank traverse than the T-62A. So what about the armor of the T-22? Well, it's 100 at the front, 80 at the side, and 80 at the rear. While the turret is 230 at the front, 170 at the side, and 140 at the rear. Now the T-22's armor is very novel, even for a Soviet medium tank. Let's first take a look at the hull. As we can see, the hull has this gigantic wedge shape that extends all the way from the front of the tank to the back of the tank. And if we look at it visually, it's very similar to kind of the IS-7 design on the front of this vehicle, which is completely different to the flat meta, for example, on the T-62. What this means is that if your armor is completely unangled at the front and someone is shooting at you, it is 200 to 230 millimeters effective on the upper hull. And if somebody stupidly tries to aim at your lower plate, it's 280 to 260 millimeters of effective armor, because look at the angling underneath it. When we compare this to, for example, the T-62A, the T-62A has 170 to 180 millimeters of upper plate effective armor, and the lower plate is 190, so massive advantage to hull armor on the T-22. But now this is where the hull armor gets really scary. Remember we were talking about this wedge shape? Well, what do you think happens when we put the tank towards the side? When we angle the tank at 45 degrees, like we can see here, that means that the vehicle has 220 millimeters of armor on the upper part of the vehicle, and between 230 and 300 millimeters of penetration all along the side of the vehicle. When angled like this, there's only one weak part of the tank, and that is that the front plate, this upper part of the front plate, becomes unangled. And so you're going to be able to get through this part of the vehicle if you've got 200 millimeters of penetration. And if that wasn't enough, the rear of the tank is also angled. If someone hits you flush in the back of the tank, you're still going to have 115 millimeters of effective armor, up to 145 in some areas. And if the back of your tank is angled, you still have 150 to 200 millimeters of rear tank armor. This completely obliterates the T-62A, which, as we can see here, has about 150 up to about 180 down the side of the tank. And if someone hits at you in the back, even high explosive rounds can go through from larger caliber guns. So what about the turret on the T-22? Well, we can see that over the mantlet, it's rather thick indeed, ranging from about 350 in parts down to 240 in others. The cheeks of this tank range from about 400 to, at its weakest, about 260 right in here on this part of the armor. Now, with regards to cupolas, the vehicle's cupolas are very small indeed. It'll be a very tough shot. And interestingly, the vehicle gets 50 millimeters of top armor, which means that unless you're shooting down at the top of the tank, it's not actually that weak. When we compare this to, for example, the top of the Object 140, we can see this is a horrendous weak point on top of the vehicle, with only 80 millimeters of effective armor and with cupolas that you can hit as well. So the T-22's turret is certainly not as powerful as the T-62A's, which has still got by far the best turret on any of the Soviet medium tanks. This really is an awesome turret. But it doesn't have the weaknesses of that top Object 140 turret armor. And interestingly as well, the T-22 has got quite a lot of rear turret armor. You're going to need 200 millimeters of penetration to be able to get through the back of this turret. Whereas when we look at the T-62A, the back of the turret is very thin indeed, and you're going to have about 68 millimeters of armor there. So it looks like the T-22 was built to last a nuclear apocalypse, and it also has 400 meters view range to boot, so it can still do, you know, that generic scouty role that medium tanks like to do occasionally. So I know by now you all must be very excited to see some gameplay, so that's quite enough theory crafting. Let's get started. So here we go, our first game in the T-22 medium. And one thing I want you to pay attention to at the start of this game is just how rapid this tank is. The vehicle in front of us is the Leopard 1. That's the Tier 10 German medium tank, and it has a great amount of mobility. We're right up to our top speed limit of 55 kilometers an hour. And you're going to see later on, hopefully when we go up some slopes, this 750 horsepower engine and pretty good ground resistances enable this vehicle to shift, absolutely shift. You know that the T-62A, it just doesn't have the same grunt as the T-54. Fair enough, it has excellent ground resistances, but it doesn't have that 750 horsepower engine. With its horsepower less than 600, I believe it's 580 off the top of my head. And so that means that the T-22 medium really just feels like a cut above all of the other Soviet medium tanks with regards to mobility. So we take a 152mm high explosive shell to the front of our tank there from a T-49. It does 127 damage. Great result for us. The frontal armor on this tank, and especially on the side there at the tracks, would have been astronomically thick. But the front on the tracks were likely to have about 300 millimeters of armor. And so that's why we were able to mitigate so much of the splash from that high explosive shell. I'm worried, however. There are 3 artillery on the enemy team, and if you locate in this location around here, you get absolutely screwed over by artillery. They will constantly rain down death upon you from this position. However, by using this location, if we align ourselves up with the artillery, which are located usually around here, we can see that there's at least some kind of cover that we're going to get from this hill. Now a T-110E4 comes around the corner. It's got a 155mm super high penetration gun. And as we can see here, he even fired an APCR round. Those APCR rounds have got 375mm of penetration, and it was unable to go through the turret armor of the T-22. I love the gun handling on this tank. It truly is some of the most spectacular gun handling I've ever seen on what I would call a high DPM medium. But then again, I guess this vehicle isn't really a high DPM medium anymore, because it doesn't have that 9 rounds a minute rate of fire that the other Soviet medium tanks, limping in at 8 instead. But I feel like for what you get with the gun handling, we fired clutch there at the T-110E4 at a very slight angle, and it still went almost exactly where we aimed it. Do you just see how we're going forwards, backwards, turning the turret, and the bloom is almost non-existent. This vehicle is pretty much pinpoint accurate within maybe half a second of aiming at your opponents. Well, at least the aiming reticule suggests that. But the gun depression, 5 degrees, isn't going to allow us to go hull down here to be able to engage those Soviet heavy tanks. So I decide that because the enemies are breaching so hard through the center of the map, and I feel like we have to protect our artillery right now. My idea was here to go and kill all of these guys, get our artillery in the game, and then wait until the enemies tried to get round the corner, and then our artillery could punish them. Our great accuracy, combined with low aim time, and 264 millimeters of penetration, is easily able to butter the front of that Centurion. Now we're aiming at the T-34. Gun depression problems, but luckily we find a good position and start to rip him apart from the side. And I'm really not even worried about him penetrating me in this location. Angling our armor at 45 degrees only gives us one frontal weak point. Now we have a juicy Jagdpanzer E100, aka the Jägeroo, sitting right in front of us. I would quite like to have some of your 1000 health. Unfortunately, I drive out in front of an ally, and he shoots me in the back of the turret, but it wasn't really his fault. I was far more worried about getting shot by that 170mm behemoth gun on the Jagdpanzer E100 than getting hit by a Speerpanzer behind me. Good job by the artillery to finish him off, and I noticed there's an E75 coming down the alleyway. This game's still pretty close. Hopefully we can manage to get ourselves back into it, but if we're to do that, we're going to have to protect our artillery from this marauding E75, and unfortunately he's shutting tanks down very quickly indeed. There's a wounded Centurion here. We want to lead the push in with him. C-75 turns his turret to the side, and I foolishly decide to shoot at his tracks, thinking that I could penetrate him there. I should have taken the shot at the side of the turret. But a bigger threat has arrived, guys. It's an FV-215B-183 who thankfully shoots the Centurion, so that gives me a lot of time to do some work on him. Now take a look at the gun handling here while we're moving. The rate of fire is good enough to keep that FV-215B-183 locked down. And when we started this, he was on full health and the E-75's on 80%. Unfortunately, we miss a shot, trying to race around the back, and we take a first penetrating shot from the E-75. So the FV-215B-183 can only aim 45 degrees in the front, to the left and to the right. So that means that if we keep out of his way, we should be okay. I try to sneak a shot into the side of the turret of the FV-215B-183 there, but the E-75 blocks the shot. And what a brawl this is. And this is where the T-22 is in its environment, brawling with opponents, using its accurate, fairly high DPM gun, and enough armor to bounce a few shots. We've already bounced 2 shots from the E-75 here, and we managed to finish off that FV-215B-183 before allowing him to engage us. And now we can use the mobility of this tank to circle strafe, a very hard tank to circle strafe unless you track it. The E-75 with the, well, fairly long time ago turret and track traverse buff should really be able to turn his tank to engage us here. But we are able to stop that by circle strafing him and using our excellent turret armor to prevent him from engaging us. We can see that his gun depression is not enough to get our hull, which is fairly low profile, and he can only get our turrets. But it looks like the enemy artillery had had enough of my shenanigans and decided to take a punt to finish me off. He flew true, and he didn't even do 13 hit points worth of damage to the E-75. That was a seriously ballsy shot by the artillery at the end of the game. However, he aimed it well, managing to take me out without TKing his friend. It's a great shot there by the artillery. This replay should have highlighted a lot of the strengths of the T-22 for you. Fantastic mobility, very good turret armor, and pretty troll hull armor as well that can keep you in the game. As well as 100mm of epic reliability, and it's only really the DPM compared to the other Soviet medium tanks that lets this vehicle down. Let's just take a very quick look at the post-game stats before we get stuck into more gameplay. So while this game only lasted for 6.5 minutes, we were able to get the high caliber medal for the 6,700 damage we did. This was 984 base experience points. Only the E75, who managed to outlast us at the end of the game, was able to get more on the enemy team. And because we didn't fire a single heat round, we made a very tasty profit this round. When it comes to the armor of this vehicle, we were able to block 1,730, giving us a potential damage of 3,200 before our vehicle was defeated. So let's put the T-22 medium through some more trials and get stuck into some more gameplay. So this time we are playing on airfield, and it's quite a tricky matchup, 48%, but then again I guess I'm not getting added into this equation, so we should be able to balance out the E50M on the enemy team. So check out the mobility of this vehicle, straight up to its top speed limit, maintaining it up this slight gradient here, but we're really going to get to see what this tank is capable of when we reach that hill in front of us, or the slope. So, there's only one place that I really want to go on this map in the T-22, or pretty much most of my medium tanks, and that's up here. From this location, you can have a huge impact on the majority of the map. We're down to 40, but still, just get a feel for that momentum up the slope. And now we have an SDB-1. Now, I don't mind him shooting me in the side. Ah, we bounced off his armor. We hit his hull there. We wanted to hit his turret. And side-scraping like this in this tank is just absolutely ridiculous. People still don't understand that from this position, you can be absolutely monstrous with your side armor. Well, at least I thought we were. Where did those shells go in? Ah, can you believe the SDB-1 aimed and hit our cupola? Where did the other shell go in? Oh, the other one went in our weak point. So as you're side-scraping out like this, I'm going to highlight the weaknesses of this tank. So if you engage these on the battlefield soon, you should be able to take advantage of this. If he's side-scraping out like this, the last thing that you want to do is shoot him in the side of the tank. In fact, I should be angling more to try and bait the players into shooting the side of my vehicle. We're trying to look for a shot here on the bat chat. So let me explain this a little bit more. So the perfect angling in this vehicle will most likely be like this. So if a T-22 medium is angling like this towards you, you don't want to shoot the side of his tank. It's like 300 millimeters of effective armor. So we're trying to scope out some shots onto the T-49. Unable to do so. And I pull back and find what looked like was going to be an easy shot on the bat chat, but it doesn't look like I gave enough lead there. Bad shot by me. Can we find another shot into the Tier 10 French medium tank? Doesn't look like we can. We try to shoot down a wall just to get closer to the VK. So the Speerpanzer comes out around the corner, and we fire a clutch shot into him after a full turret turn there. Now I'm going to get the front position and hopefully side-scrape my tank. Oh, it looks like the E100 wants to do that as well. I've got to keep my armor in though, because I don't want to get hit by these German heavy tanks that are below me. But I also want to pressure them. A heat round goes into my buddy. But I managed to track the E100 for the first time. I should be able to lock him in here, but he uses his repair kit. I don't quite manage to reload in time to get a second shot into the E75. Come on, just a little bit more. There you go, I got the E75. Should have him locked down now. And I'm not even worried about these guys shooting up at me here. I should be okay. Oh, disaster. The shell goes slightly right, and that means we don't manage to finish him off. But the E75 comes round to have another chance at us, and he actually manages to penetrate our tank. Let's see where that one went in. As we hit the Speerpanzer at the back. Oh wow, looks like he actually managed to penetrate the top bar of the tank. And when you think about it, because of the V-shape coming in here, if he actually hits the tip of the V, so to say, then actually the armor there probably wouldn't be too fantastic. So that's another thing that you've got to consider, is that the tip of the V on this tank, or the edges of the vehicle at the top, will likely be quite flat if you manage to catch them. And also aiming up into them is another advantage. If you're aiming up into the V from being below this tank, then that would be okay as well. A shot like this is very likely to penetrate. Oh, it just whizzes over the top of the Speerpanzer there. So this game is not as frenetic as the last one. It's quite slow-paced, but we've already managed to pick up 2,200 damage, but have yet to secure a kill. Look at all the bounces so far this game. Bounce, ricochet, bounce, no damage, no damage, no damage. Only about a third of the shots that are hitting us are actually contesting our armor, or even less. So I want to try and get around this corner and try and put some pressure on the enemy team, but we are down by 2 tanks. Luckily we find the side of the E100, and that is the easiest kill you could ever pick up. Now we look for a shot on the T-49 who might be skulking around. Oh, the shell goes just a little too high and we're unable to hit that Tier 8 American light tank. Now in this position, I'm not too worried about the artillery. But we managed to bounce a shot, I believe, there. Or maybe nothing hit the tank. It looked like it did. Something flashed right before our eyes. Now we want to put some more pressure up right now. But from this position, I'm really worried about the tank destroyers that are located here, engaging us. So by being in this position, we're extending quite a lot of view range out. And maybe we can put some pressure on the E50M on the enemy team. But he's thinking about the same thing. Luckily for me, he shot the side of our tank and our armor held up very well indeed. Another 390 damage blocked there. And the E50M has a lot of penetration. I believe it's 270, maybe slightly less. Can't remember quite what the E50M has. Anyway, it's very high, accurate. But you know, 270 is not enough to reliably contest this 300 millimeters of effective side armor, especially at mid to long ranges. So the STB-1 has been spotted above us, and an Object 268 has had enough of the camp and so decides to push out. I come forward to try and help him out, and quickly put a shot into the Speerpanzer. A great hit by the Object 268 on our team. Finally seems that we're going to be making some progress. And I take a shot into the tracks there, likely from the VK450-2B, and also the Waffenträger auf E100. What a result there, just absorbing pretty much another 1,000 damage, and managing to take down the German Tier 10 tank destroyer. So I decide that I want to advance a little bit here. Not too worried about the VK nailing me, but I don't want to let this T-49 have a free shot. Oh wow, we sneak a shot around the corner into that tank and decide to press on. He narrowly misses us with his shot. That would have been a disaster if that one had hit the back of my tank, likely taking out a few modules or possibly even setting me on fire. The VK misses. The E50M is busy with a bat chat, and that should allow us to progress the fight. Trying to spot the VK, but he's having none of it. But if I side scrape, I should be in a good position here to take a shot, but not from the artillery. But luckily, we have a nice clean shot into him. He only notices that he's been spotted, probably his sixth sense going off. We put one into him. Oh, come on, put it in, put it in. Yes! Nailed him. 4,000 damage and 3 kills so far this game. That E50M is certainly still a threat though, probably harassing that AMX-30. We push down and around using the high mobility of this tank to try and outflank this T-95, but still looking for the shot on the E50M, but it doesn't seem to be there. Take a quick look to see which way the T-95 is facing, and he's facing the AMX-30. I didn't expect him to. I thought he would be facing the northern flank now. He takes a big shot from one of the 150 or 152 millimeter guns to the right of me, and that enables us to come in. Unfortunately, we don't penetrate his tank with our first shot. Second one, however, we try and fire into the fuel tanks to possibly damage them and set him on fire. But from here, there's nothing really he can do, and we can just get behind him and punish him. The E100 on our team finishes him off, and that allows us to try and engage the VK. I try and hit the tracks on the VK. We don't quite manage to, but our good rate of fire manages to put in a second shot into him before he pulls back. And from here on, I think his days are severely numbered. We would have to monumentally cock up to lose this one. He shoots at the front of our tank, fails to penetrate us, and we finish him off. So just take a look at the last series of hits that took this tank. And they're all from large caliber guns. Bounce, no damage, bounce, no damage, no damage, no damage, no damage, no damage, no damage, no damage. Only the E75 shooting up into our tank was able to penetrate. Let's have a very quick look at the post-game stats before I sum up and give my conclusion on this T-22 medium tank. So this was our ace tanker in the T-22 medium, and unsurprisingly we got a steel wall and a high caliber medal. We dished out 5,521 damage here, picking up 4 kills in the game. We didn't manage to hit all of our shots, but that was due to some poor marksmanship by me, and also that I was taking very chancy hits this game. And of the 25 hit, 19 penetrated. Nevertheless, that still totaled 5,500, and just look how much we blocked with our armor to get that steel wall. 3,600 damage blocked by our armor. We took 15 hits this game and only 3 of them penetrated. I honestly can't believe there's a medium tank in the game that can kind of side scrape like a heavy. Or at least until people know about the front plate weak points. In addition to that 5,500 damage, we also did 2,250 spotting damage, which is sometimes very easy to forget about this tank, that it is also a very fast medium and can fit the role of a reconnaissance vehicle very well. And so the T-22 medium is an absolute beast, and frankly, if I think it goes into the game as it is, it's going to be one of the best Tier 10 medium tanks. The kind of side armor that this vehicle gets is just completely ridiculous due to the wedge shape that you see on the hull all the way through the length of the vehicle. It's just absolutely baffling that this tank can have about 250 to 300 millimeters of effective side armor, which kind of gives it heavy levels of mitigation from at least not the front of the tank. And as we saw, the turret armor on this tank is way better than the Object 140. It's not quite as good as the T-62A, but if you manage to get this thing hulled down with the 5 degrees of gun depression that the vehicle gets, just like the T-62A, you should feel very comfortable with the enemy shooting you in the turret. The only downside, of course, is the DPM. Here is the damage per minute of all of the Tier 10 medium tanks, with the Batchat having the lowest, but of course that vehicle's got an autoloader, and the Object 430 having the highest. Then you've got your AAA DPM tanks, like the Object 140, T-62, and SB1. Then you had kind of like your mid-grade DPM tanks, the M48A1, the Leopard, the FE4202, and the 121. And previously it was only the E50M that was quite a bit short stacked compared to the other vehicles. And then this is where the T-22 is. It's going to have the 3rd lowest DPM of any of the medium tanks, and the 2nd lowest if you exclude the autoloader. And that's certainly not something to forget about. The T-22 medium is going to find it way harder to shoot its way out of tricky situations compared to its other Soviet medium tank brothers, or even compared to like the mid-ground DPM vehicle. But when you think also about the gun handling just being so darn good, it means that you can quite often be more reliable with your DPM. And unlike tanks like the STB-1 and the Object 430, not spend forever aiming at the target before you're able to engage them and hopefully pull back round the corner. So I guess the next question that you're going to be asking is, how the hell do I get one of these monsters? So I'm going to read the press release word for word. World of Tanks 10.0 is dubbed Rubicon, which presents an eerie alternative history which will be supported by war-torn maps, Paris and Berlin, that are exclusively playable for Rampage. There is also a special season of personal battle missions, where players can earn the impressive T-22 medium, which was a huge hit with the testers. The achievement hunters can obtain boosters and unique medals in their fight. So to be able to get the T-22 SR, you are going to have to earn it through a new season of personal battle missions. But I'm not 100% sure, considering there was no paragraph between those two sentences, whether it's going to be only in the Rampage game mode, or if it's going to be the personal battle missions that we've seen in the random game mode as it is. Nevertheless, I think it's a great idea that this tank is going to be a reward for missions, and I just certainly hope that Wargaming have learned from their past annoyances, such as the incinerator mission. And we'll have to see what their new conditions are going to be for acquiring this tank. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please consider giving it a like down below. It really helps the channel out. And let me know in the comments down below what you think about the T-22 medium. Are you as excited for the vehicle as I am? Do you think it's going to be completely ridiculous and dominate Tier 10 medium gameplay? Or do you think the fact that the vehicle gets rather poor DPM is sort of a balancing factor? Stay tuned to the channel, because tomorrow I'm going to be releasing a video on the M4A1 Sherman Revolorize. And as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.